Return what isn't yours, Venus. Judith's voice rang out through the Grand Ballroom, sharp and full of fury. My stepmother stood near the center of the room, her expression twisted in anger. You stole my daughter's birthright. The crystal chandelier overhead cast shimmering light across the space, but at that moment, it felt like the entire room had dimmed. A heavy silence fell over the elegantly dressed crowd as all eyes turned toward me. My chest tightened, and my fingers trembled around the delicate stem of my champagne glass. It nearly slipped from my grasp. I am Venus Carter, a 31-year-old pianist who never imagined I would one day be in charge of my late father's manufacturing company. Yet here I stood, accused in front of Houston's most influential business figures. Just an hour earlier, I had walked into the Westbrook Hotel Ballroom, my heart cautiously hopeful. It was Judith's 55th birthday celebration, and the invitation she sent had been unexpected. Since my father's passing a year ago, our relationship had been strained, nearly non-existent, but when the invitation arrived last week, I thought perhaps this was her way of extending an olive branch, an attempt to move forward after all the tension and legal battles. I was wrong. This wasn't a reconciliation, this was a trap. That company belonged in Pamela's hands. Judith's voice cut through the stunned murmurs of the onlookers. She took a step closer, her heels clicking against the marble floor. Your father built that business for his children, and you manipulated him when he was sick. A wave of whispers swept through the crowd. I scanned the room, searching for a familiar, supportive face, but all I found were judgmental stares. These were people I had worked with over the past year, clients, suppliers, respected figures in the business community, people I had believed respected me, but in this moment, their expressions were unreadable, or worse, disapproving. That's not true, I protested, though my voice felt weak compared to Judith's venomous accusations. My father's will was clear, I continued, forcing myself to stand tall. He wanted his real daughter to have the company. Judith spat, cutting me off, her eyes burned with contempt, not some piano-playing stray who barely visited him. Her words struck like a slap, a lump formed in my throat, but I refused to cry, not here, not in front of them. I had spent years traveling as a professional pianist, and it was true, I hadn't been home as often as I should have. The guilt of that already weighed on me every single day, but hearing it thrown at me like this, in front of an audience, was a different kind of pain. I caught sight of my stepsister, Pamela, standing just behind her mother. A small, satisfied smirk played on her lips. She had never shown any interest in Carter manufacturing while my father was alive, but now, she nodded along, as if every word Judith spoke was gospel truth. She's right, someone whispered from a nearby table. I always thought it was odd how she suddenly appeared when Thomas got sick, another voice murmured. The room, which had once felt grand and elegant, now seemed suffocating. The whispers grew louder, fusing into a chorus of doubt and suspicion. A few people looked away, but others openly stared, their expressions filled with distrust. One person even let out a low, disapproving boo. Judith straightened her posture, a cruel satisfaction settling into her features. I think you should leave, she said, her voice calm now, full of the confidence of someone who knew they had won. Nobody wants a thief at this celebration. For a moment, I couldn't move, my hands clenched at my sides, but my legs felt unsteady beneath me. The weight of the humiliation, the betrayal, the sheer injustice of it all crushed down on me. But I wouldn't give them the satisfaction of seeing me break. Without another word, I turned and walked toward the exit, my heartbeat thundering in my ears. As soon as I stepped outside, the cool night air hit me, but it did nothing to ease the burning in my chest. I reached my car and slid into the driver's seat, gripping the steering wheel as the tears finally spilled over. I let the sobs come, each one carrying the weight of the past year. It wasn't just about tonight, this was the culmination of months of being undermined, doubted, and resented. My father, Thomas Carter, had spent over 40 years building Carter Manufacturing from the ground up. He had poured his life into that company, and before he died, he had made his wishes clear. I remembered sitting beside his hospital bed, his hand frail but steady as he held mine. Venus, he had said, his voice weak but sure, you have a mind for business that Pamela doesn't. She's smart, but she doesn't care about Carter Manufacturing. You do, I've seen it in you, how you analyze everything, how you understand what makes things work. He had given me the company because he believed in me, and I had given up my music career to honor that belief. At first, When the will was read, Judith and Pamela had seemed to accept his decision, but that illusion had shattered within weeks. They had fought it in court, challenged it 3 separate times, and lost every appeal, yet they hadn't stopped trying to discredit me. Tonight was simply their most public attack yet. My phone buzzed on the passenger seat. I wiped at my tears, sniffling as I glanced at the screen. It was Bernard Wesley, my father's longtime attorney and the executor of his will. Just heard what happened. Are you okay? Call me. My hands still trembled as I dialed his number. Bernard, I said, my voice shaky as I recounted the events of the night. This is unacceptable, he said, his baritone voice filled with anger. Judith knows perfectly well that your father was of sound mind when he made that will. We have video evidence of him explaining his decision. She's lost in court every single time. What more does she want? They all believe her. Bernard, I whispered, everyone in that room thinks I manipulated him. There was a pause, and then his voice took on a new edge of determination. Do you have your laptop with you? I blinked, caught off guard. It's in my trunk. Why? Good. Meet me at my office in 30 minutes. If Judith wants to take this public, then let's give the public the full story, every document, every court ruling, every piece of evidence your father left behind to protect you from exactly this scenario. I sat up straighter. The weight in my chest didn't disappear, but something else stirred within me, something stronger than humiliation, a flicker of resolve. For the first time since leaving that ballroom, I felt like I wasn't drowning. I'll be there in 20, I said, starting the engine. Judith wanted a war. She was about to get one. I took a deep breath and spoke into the microphone. I would like you all to hear from my father. Bernard, my father's longtime attorney, stepped forward and connected a small USB drive to the sound system. A moment later, the large screen at the front of the ballroom flickered to life. The image of my father appeared, his face thin, his body weaker than it once was, but his sharp eyes still full of determination. The room fell silent. People stopped sipping their drinks and turned their full attention to the screen. Even though he had been sick, my father sat up straight in his chair, the deep brown leather contrasting with his pale skin. Some guests gasped softly at the sight of him. Many had not seen how much his illness had changed him in those final months. Then, his voice filled the room, raspy but strong. My name is Thomas Carter, he said. I am recording this statement on March 15th of last year, in the presence of my attorney, Bernard Wesley, and Dr. Catherine Wilson, who has officially certified my mental competence. The camera shifted briefly, showing Bernard and Dr. Wilson seated beside my father. Then, it returned to him. I am the founder and CEO of Carter Manufacturing. After much thought and careful consideration, I have decided that when I am no longer here, the controlling interest in my company will go to my daughter, Venus Carter. He paused for a moment, adjusting his position slightly in his chair. I could see him wince, the pain of his illness evident, but he pressed on. I understand that this decision may upset some people, but I want to be clear about why I have made this choice. At that moment, even though my father had recorded this message a year ago, it felt as if he were looking directly at Judith, my stepmother, her lips pressed into a thin line, her fingers clenching the tablecloth in front of her. Venus has shown both the intelligence and the dedication necessary to lead Carter Manufacturing. While her background is in music, she has spent many hours learning about the business, studying our industry, and analyzing operations. She has taken business courses at my request and has proven herself to be highly capable. As he spoke, the screen briefly changed, displaying clips of me in the factory alongside my father, studying blueprints, discussing logistics with clients, and attending meetings I had not even realized were recorded. Then, the video returned to my father. My stepdaughter, Pamela, has had multiple chances to become involved in the company but has turned them all down. When asked directly, she stated, and I quote, "I have no interest in spending my life making boring industrial parts." There was a pause, and then another video clip appeared. Pamela was seated at a family dinner, rolling her eyes as she repeated those exact words. The video cut to another moment, a recorded conversation in my father's office where Pamela declined a management training offer. My father continued, "I love both my daughters, but a company must be led by someone who truly cares about it. Venus has that passion. I am of sound mind and body in making this decision." Dr. Wilson reappeared on the screen, formally confirming my father's mental clarity, her medical credentials displayed clearly beneath her name. Then, the video faded to black, and the room remained silent for several seconds. I exhaled slowly and faced the audience once again. Since taking over, Carter Manufacturing has increased revenue by 22%. We have expanded into 2 new markets, created 17 new jobs, and managed to avoid layoffs, even after losing the Anderson contract. Bernard pressed a button, and financial charts appeared on the screen, displaying the company's recent success. If you look at page 12 of your binders, you'll find letters from employees who have worked with my father for decades. These letters express their confidence in my leadership. I let the weight of my words settle before continuing. On page 15, you will also find a formal job offer extended to Pamela 3 months ago, a director position that would have given her significant authority without requiring day-to-day management. She declined. Her response: she had better things to do than waste time in a factory. At that moment, I saw Pamela's face turn red as people turned to look at her. Finally, I said, my voice growing firmer, the last section of the binder contains court rulings that dismissed Judith's legal challenges against my father's will. 3 different judges found no evidence of coercion or manipulation. Medical experts confirmed my father was completely competent when he made his decision. I took a step forward, locking eyes with Judith, who stood frozen near the cake table. You asked me to return what isn't mine, but as these documents prove beyond any doubt, Carter Manufacturing is exactly where my father wanted it to be, in my hands. I picked up the microphone again and addressed the entire room. I understand that many of you were misled tonight. You heard one side of a complicated story and reacted based on limited information. A hush fell over the crowd. I took a deep breath. I don't blame you for that, but now, I ask you to review the evidence before making any further judgments. The mood in the ballroom shifted. The hostility that had filled the room earlier was now replaced with uncertainty, and, for some, embarrassment. Gregory Thompson, the CEO of our biggest client, stood from his chair. Venus, I owe you an apology, he said. I should have known better than to believe such accusations without proof. His words seemed to break the tension. Guests started flipping through their binders, murmuring among themselves. A slow clap started in the back of the room, gradually building into scattered applause. Judith pushed past the lawyers blocking her path and stormed toward me, Pamela following closely behind. How dare you, she spat, her voice low and furious. This was supposed to be my birthday celebration, and you turned it into a courtroom drama. This is exactly why Thomas never should have given you the company. You have no class. I smiled calmly. Interesting perspective, Judith, considering you used your own birthday to publicly accuse me of theft and try to humiliate me. Pamela jumped in, her voice shaking. You manipulated him when he was sick. You were barely even around. Bernard, holding a tablet, stepped forward. Actually, the hospital and hospice logs show that Venus visited her father 83 times in his final 6 months. Pamela, you visited 12 times. Judith, you visited 37 times. Pamela opened her mouth but had no response. Judith's expression hardened. The company was supposed to secure our future. Thomas promised me we would always be taken care of. I met her gaze steadily. And you are. The trusts my father created ensure that you and Pamela will never struggle financially. But he did not give you control of his company because he knew what would happen to it if he did. Judith's face twisted with rage. For a moment, I thought she might slap me. Instead, she grabbed Pamela's arm and turned toward the exit. This isn't over, she hissed. Actually, it is, Bernard called after her. Any more legal challenges will be considered harassment, and we will seek legal penalties. As they disappeared, the tension in the room eased. Guests began approaching me, offering congratulations. Edward Winters, my father's former CFO, took my hand. Thomas was right about you, he said warmly. You've got his backbone. Tears welled in my eyes, but this time, they were tears of pride.